All right, good morning, everybody. Someone also gonna say good afternoon when you say good morning. All right, so today we are going to be focusing still on the same topic of culture and community, but now we're doing topic 2.8, which is the social construction of race and the reproduction status. Let me say this first to make sure everybody see your eyes and see your eyes first. This is going to be a difficult conversation. You will see some images that you might find uncomfortable, but the topic itself is just uncomfortable. So I'll be trying to make sure I monitor you, but if you feel any kind of way, any points, just raise your hand. But I'm telling you now, this is one of those topics that can be uncomfortable. So I ask that we put away all phones that you're not using for this assignment. If you want to take your notes on paper, you can take your notes on paper. If you want to take them electronically, take them electronically. But I am giving you that heads up now. Is that right, follow? And again, it's nothing personal. This is just looking at the history and adding on to what we've been talking about. With that being said, here is your essential question for today. Your essential question is, how has the social construction, how has the social construction of race historically influenced the reproduction of social and economic status in America? And of course, you got a question mark at the end. Okay. So again, the essential question for today is, how has the social construct of race historically influenced the reproduction of social and economic status in America? Okay. So as always, we will be discussing together, answering questions together. It may be seen as uncomfortable for some. Just give me that heads up. As always, we're gonna look at sources. We just had a quiz on what source again? It was 2.7. What was the source dealing with? The Louisiana what? The state code, right? And I told y'all to review that because South Carolina's state code was very similar, so was other states. Everybody follow? It wasn't a I got you moment. It was I told you to do it moment. All right. And that's also why in your source book, you ain't got to worry about that one. Clear? Okay. All right, let's get on it. Culture and community. So we start off right with it in 2.8. Explain how, what's that word right there? Partus? Partus. I cannot say the next word. I'm not gonna lie. Sequitur, Vitrim impacted African American families and informed the emergence of racial taxonomies in the United States. Before we start, is everybody hear me on this? Before we start, in your notes, I need y'all to define Patriots, Sequitur, Ventimtrim. I cannot say those words. Thank you. Y'all look, y'all give me the definitions in your notes. Everybody clear there? And then I also want y'all to give me the definition of racial taxonomies in your notes. This is one of the few times I'm gonna say use AI or your phones. Everybody clear there? So let's go ahead and nap in your notes. I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes on that. Again, you can and you should use either AI or your notes to define those words. Yeah. So just put them in your notes and just define. Oh, I got them there. Forgive me. It's been a long morning, people. That's all I'm gonna tell you. It's been a long morning. Took me an hour and 45 minutes to get here this morning. That's all I'm gonna say. By McKeitron High School. All right. So with The definitions are here, and forgive me for not noticing it. Um, can I get someone to read the definition of patrius sacratorum trim? Go ahead, either one of you.
Parties Secutor Ventrum, a 17th century law, defined a child's legal status based on the status of his mother.
That's good. Zero, I got that? So that means if the mom was a slave, what's the child going to be? If the mom was free, what would the child be? Free, right? We clear there? And then Parches, go ahead and read that one. Liam, you can go do that since you want to do that.
Partis codified hereditary racial slavery in the United States by ensuring that enslaved African American women's children would inherit their status as property.
So if you was a considered property, what would your child be considered? Does that make sense, everybody? Yes, no? So the first one, the legal status of the child is the same as the mother. And then as far as how the mother is seen, it's also how the child will be seen. Is everybody following me still so far? We still good? And forgive me, mine's come back together. I'm up, I'm just not fully up. What?
Oh, that's a slave. I thought it was a
How did y'all miss that? I stalled on everything. So can I ask y'all a question? And now let me go back to say this. Let's go back to our AP contracts. Is everybody with me on this? You have signed off saying that you're going to be studying and reading a certain amount of hours a day. Does everybody got me on that? Yep. That studying can just simply mean you go back and review these notes. Because these are in CTLS for you, yes or no? So it's not like this is the first time you see it. And for that matter, I've been recording lectures too, haven't I? Take a pick of how you want to go back and do your review. Okay? So I went back on this one. Brother ain't going back again, though. I need y'all to make sure you go back and do your own review. Now, if you're not reviewing your own, that might be why y'all got 60s and 70s on that last quiz. I could tell very easily because there's 30 questions I asked that's based on in-class discussion. There's other questions based on what you got to do on your own discussion. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah? Just be honest. I can tell by grades by what's going on. And questions. All right, let's continue this. We're still in 2.A. Now, Partis was designed to prohibit what? Mixed race children. This was the same common idea until the 70s. When does anybody know what court case legalized same-sex marriage, but interracial marriage? Loving versus Virginia. Can someone get that door for us? So it wasn't until the 70s where you got Loving v. Virginia, where mixed race marriages were okay, but they wanted to prohibit mixed race children of black women from inheriting the free status of their father. So, because again, you had a lot of, and I can't say how much, but a lot of slave masters sleeping with slave, right? So you have a lot of mixing. And the idea is that, well, my daddy's free, I should be free. Well, not under this particular law here. You go under not the father, but you go under the what? Mother. And your mother was a what? So therefore you are a what? So if you go watch 12 Years a Slave, you will see this. You go see Ropes, you'll see this all be played out where they're still enslaved, even though the father is the master. What's your question? Yeah, there's always been a discussion, and I've never actually looked into the research of it, where Thomas Jefferson owned slave and he was a father of enslaved. So that's another part you can go into as well. Okay.
There was this kid named Chicken George.
That goes into the same thing we was talking about with Kizzy, because that was the mom, and then Chicken George. Now, Partis also gave male enslavers the right to deny responsibility for their children a father, which means this whole idea that so people's looking at the idea of family structure and the mixing black male in families, you could definitely go here and you got a primary source because this law said it was okay to deny that you are my child. Is there got me on that? Because you're not my child, you're my what? Slave. You're my property. Think about the idea of that. Your property or your slave is actually your son or your daughter. And that was extremely common. So again, there's a lot of psychological studies you can maybe go look at. And this question you could do even in psychology class. These are things you can go do dissertations or master theses on. But the psychology of that is really, really deep. And I got your hand. And it's also changed the idea of what enslaved women's reproduction lives and rights were. So you doing something on, for example, abortions. You can go back to this here and have a conversation on it, can you not? This is a very early. I'm not saying this is abortions, but the whole idea about how a woman's reproductive rights and laws are looked at goes back to this point here. Okay, because again, they're seen as property, not human beings. That I don't know a way to say it and not make it sound horrible. Who had a hand? Yeah, that did. So the idea that say it was a white woman or an enslaved black man, that did occur. Is that right clear there? And that started a whole nother firestorm of issues because then you don't have this for protection no more, right? Because now that kid is technically free because the mother was white. But then also there's a question of acceptance in society. You probably not living in that community no more. You going somewhere where nobody knows you. Is that right? Got me on that? And then you're gonna it's a whole other level into that. I'm just not mentally able to go there right now because it's no good way to have that conversation. But you can look into it. It's very very prominent. I just cannot mentally do that right now. I'm just being honest. Um, yeah, sorry. Questions? Okay. But again, the opposite flip side was a very common thing, and I'm gonna say typically that child will be possibly killed. That family had to move out that community, and you had to go somewhere no one knows you. So if you had that child in southern Louisiana, you moving somewhere up north where no one's gonna know you. Is that right? Got me on that? Because the whole idea, no matter how much money you got, you're not gonna be probably welcome in that community depending on where you are. And I say probably because this wasn't always the case as far as acceptance. It's just stereotypically the acceptance wasn't very high. We good so far? But I'm gonna say for my studies in Black studies in Africa, I just strayed away from that because the stories were never they always bad, but I couldn't mentally do those. All right, 2.8b. We got to explain how racial concepts and classifications emerge alongside definitions of status. So you talked about the status already. Now let's kind of go more in detail about what happened. Who wants to read the first essential knowledge for me? Go ahead. Read it loud. Read number one and read 1A for me, okay?
Within the discipline of African American studies, among other fields, the concept of race is not based in clear biological distinctions. As more genetic difference and variation appear within racial groups than between racial groups.
Okay, so stay right there, right there. So when you talk about race, there's a book. I'm not sure if I got it here. There's a book that really goes into detail about the history of this idea of racism, and it does a good job of talking about the biology of it. Is everybody with me so far on this? Um, biology. Oh, I do have it. This is the book right here. It looks clean because I'll use like literally 2 pages of my dissertation on this. And this is why I was going back to say you ain't got to read everything. Is everybody got me on that? But what this book does right here, and I'm gonna see can I find a quote. Here we go. Y'all ready? This is from Racism: A Short History by George Fickerson. Y'all with me? And I quote, the effort to guarantee quote, racial purity in the American South anticipated effects of official Nazi persecution of Jews in the 1930s. The Nuremberg laws of the 1935 prohibited intermarriage or sexual relations between Jews and Gentiles. And the propaganda surrounding the legislation emphasized the sexual threat that the predatory Jewish males presented to German womanhood and the purity of German blood. Is that right with me so far? That's the same thing that's going on in America since we're taking out the idea of Germans. Is that right, follow? This is why America had such a hard time in World War II fighting against the Germans, because guess what they was doing here in the United States for a very long time. Is there a follow? And that's what, and we don't normally talk about those things, but that's another part. The more revolution of people throughout the world against what the Nazis did is reinforce the scientific studies of undetermined, undetermined, undetermining racist genetics, serve to discredit the scientific racism that has been rectable and influential in the United States and Europe before the Second World War. That is literally what we talk about right now. True or false? Okay. So, and again, didn't read the whole book, but I got that one part right. So, and then again, when we have study halls, y'all can look at my books, but I'm never gonna get rid of them because these are very personal because I went through stuff with these books I got. That goes into this whole idea about the biology. It's a very long-standing situation. Is everybody clear there? Let's continue with to phenotype. Who can get to that part for me? Hmm? Oh, no, yeah, I summed the rest of it up, so you good. Call somebody else to read number 2 for me. If we do this popcorning. Chantel, I know you came in late. You see what we're doing? Where we at? Okay. And you missed a quiz, so just get with me and we make that up. Go ahead, Roman. Read number 2 for us. Number 2. You don't have it on your screen? Go ahead. Phenotype. All right. So phenotype meaning skin color, hair texture, typically goes with perceptions of racial identity. Does everybody got me on that? To have a perception of someone, is that considered a stereotype, or is it what's the other word? Is it stereotype or what? Prejudice. Which one is it? Is it stereotype or prejudice we talk about as far as phenotype? If you're not sure, look it up real quick. Look up prejudice, look up stereotype. Make sure you know which one you want to go with. Don't assume. Look it up. Is that prejudice? Everybody look it up real quick. I don't want you to guess it. Because I think all your topics have something to do with that. Oh, speaking of topics, thank you all for submitting those thesis statements on CTLS. Everybody that did that, I left y'all comments and details about what you need to do. Most of y'all will only get 50% and maybe have a hot shot chance of actually getting credit for the thesis. Does everybody got me on that? So at that point, we got to do some editing with AI. Does everybody got me on that? Edit with AI to get you some ideas. You are not using AI to write your thesis statements. Is everybody clear there? You're using AI to gather some ideas because now you're on your 3rd edit of the thesis statement. Is that clear? I am not saying use AI to write your thesis, am I? I'm saying use it to get some ideas of how you can rephrase your thesis to where you will get full credit on that. Does everybody follow? And if you didn't submit, you didn't get that feedback. And it was extra credit, by the way, too. All right, what is a stereotype? First, nobody looked it up. Implied traits based on one's character. So, and then what is, so that's what again? That's a stereotype. It's a stereotype. This is being stereotyped. I wanted to make sure that the idea of perceptions of racial identity, the idea of phenotype, I would have in my notes saying stereotypes. Is that right clear there? Do you see where we are? Okay. And you missed a quiz at the start of class. You just got to get with me to make it up, okay? All right. During the era of slavery, racial categories were also defined by law, regardless of phenotype, also known as what? Stereotypes. Legal statutes, like I cannot say that word. I'm sorry. Partis sector ventrum defined. I said it. Defined racial categories and tied them to rights and status in order to perpetuate slavery over what? Generations. So that means generation after generation still gonna fall up under this same category. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So I see about maybe 4 people I assume are not taking notes. Be ready because I like those quizzes that you real quick, don't I? And the quizzes, they open those, are they not? I said it.
You didn't say that.
I said open note, not open mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I was already finished with it.
Man, you did pretty good on the still, so that's good. All right. In fact, Corey, go ahead and read number 3, A3 and 3A for us.
In the U.S., race classifications was determined on the basis of hypo-descent, categorizing biracial individuals as belonging or to minority racial categories.
Does everybody got me on that? So if you were a biracial child, which category did you get put into? The more you will get put into the black category. That goes back to that 1% rule. Is everybody clear there? If you got 1% of anything, guess what you are? You're that 1%. That's the dominant. Pick somebody to do B4s and then the sub note.
Prior to the Civil War, states differed on the percentage of ancestry that defined a person as white or black. In the late 19th to 20th century, practice known as the one-drop rule classified a person with any degree of African descent as part of a singular inferior status.
So although many African Americans had European and indigenous ancestry, indigenous meaning Native Americans ancestry, race classification prohibited them from embracing multiracial or multi-ethnic heritage. Let me reiterate, this idea of a colorblind society and multiracial society is a very new phenomenon. Is that clear there? It is new. It is new for my generation. I'm 40. I'm in my 40s, and especially for you all as teenagers. Did I got me on that? Be very careful when someone says we're a colorblind society when we've seen the legality of the laws, right? It's still based off race and gender. All right, let's go ahead and rotate seats real quick. Quickly, come on, let's go. Y'all, all y'all could just get up and move. Get up, move, stretch real quick, recalibrate. Come on, let's go. We have limited time today. All right. We're almost done, by the way. We're almost done, yeah. I'm glad you're happy. All right, so again, just as a reminder, the rotations is to benefit you because that keeps you from being stagnant. You sit in classes an hour, hour and a half, never moving is not healthy for you. And it also kind of recalibrates your brain for you now to open and listen to me a little bit better. All right, so let's keep moving. So we got our first source. All right, we going back to what state, y'all? We're going back to Virginia. B, go ahead and read this General Assembly from what year is this? 1662, which means this predates even what we talked about last, right? All right, go ahead and read this for us.
Whereas some doubts of Harrison whether children got by English upon a Negro woman should be enslaved or free. Why is two F's? I don't like it.
I don't know.
Be therefore enacted by declared by this present Grand Assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free only according to the condition of the mother, and that if any Christian shall commit
fornication
with a Negro man or woman, he or she so offending shall pay double the fines of imposed by the former act.
So in other words, if you slept with someone outside your race, you pay a higher fine. Is that right? Got me on that? And more is, because you look at the kid. And it's just the idea of, like familiarity and commonality. Pretty clear. That'll always stop the situation either, right? So under English law, a child received his or her status from his father. That was under English law. During the Virginia colonial law of 1962, they made the child of an enslaved mother was also a slave for life. Is that right clear there? Yeah. So they changed it from what English law said. Is that right clear there? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So what I would have here for my notes for this particular source is that under English law, the child would under the status of who? The father. But once we got to colonial Virginia, the child went under the status of who? The mother. Is that right clear there? Remember, in 1662, colonial Virginia, you're most likely just coming directly from England. Is that right? Got me on that? You didn't have too many generations. This is still very early in colonial times. But they saw the need to change that because guess what they were doing with the people that's coming over and enslaved? Guess what they were doing with those women? They were raping, sleeping, doing everything else with them. And they was having kids. They saw a problem and they fixed it. Is that right? I got that? And I say that in quotation marks. Y'all with me so far? Yeah, I said this was going to be easy conversation, right? But this goes into the legality of things. But this is the stuff also that sparked me to want to go to law school and do things I've done up to my PhD. Now, go ahead and open up this link. So this is a primary document. This is the full text, if you will. Not a whole lot of what we were just referring to. Does everybody follow me on that? Yes? Yeah, go ahead. I'll write you out. All right. So the context. I guess someone to read the context for us, please.
In the act, Negro women's children to serve according to the condition of the mother, passed by the General Assembly in the session of December 1662, Virginia's colonial government attempted to better define the conditions by which people were enslaved or free. This was a reversal of the usual common law presumption that the status of the child was determined by the father. The act enabled the reproduction of one's own labor force.
So this law said you can go ahead and have kids with your own labor force and then have your kid work for you and make you money. But that's not your kid. Is everybody got me on that? No matter how you look at the psychology of this is just wild. All right. There's no other way to say that. And I can't make sense out of it, but I can't say I understand why they did it. So I just want to make sure y'all can see the document. And that's what we was referring to here. Does everybody got me on that? So I gave you excerpt of that. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. So now, am I not a woman and a sister? This is from the Liberator in 1849. You remember Liberator was a abolitionist document. I want to say book, journal, whatever you want to call it, that was going out in the North trying to let the Northerners know what's going on in the South. Everybody got me on that? William Lloyd Garrison, if I'm not mistaken, is the one who wrote this. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, okay? All right. So what I want y'all to do right now is just quietly focus and key in on reading what this says. Okay? So just read, am I a woman and a sister? So just read that right there. Okay, did we all read that? Yes? Okay. So now, in 1656, Elizabeth Key, we're going to learn more about her in a second, do a crash course, became the first black woman in North America to sue for her freedom and win. So she was the first one, Elizabeth Key. Does everybody got me on that? So if anybody's talking about family issues or talk about male-female relations, you got to talk about Elizabeth Key because I'm telling you that right now. Does everybody got me on that? And now, because if you use this, that will be considered a primary or secondary source. Primary, okay? Now, soon after, in 1662, the legal doctrine of Patres Secur Venturum was passed by the General Assembly of Virginia and spread throughout the remaining 13 colonies. So, for lack of a better phrase, we could say it's her fault, but she also showed how she can win the situation. Is everybody still with me?
Yep.
All right, let's get a little deeper into Miss Elizabeth Key. All right. What y'all gonna do now is answer these 8 questions here. I would suggest taking a screenshot. Does everybody got me on that? Take a screenshot. I got your hand 1 second. And what we're gonna do is watch this crash course, Black American History. Does everybody got me on that? And that's the last thing we're doing for this particular part of 2.8. So, number 1, what does Clint Smith say the beauty of law is? Elizabeth Key was a blank woman who was born in Warwick County, Virginia, in blank. How did the courts at the time see the labels, quote, Negro and quote, slave? In what ways was Elizabeth left in a vulnerable and uncertain position? What did the heirs of the Marsham estate, the heirs, someone close that door back, the heirs of the Marsham estate do when John died? Why was the argument of Elizabeth was a baptized Christian and could not be enslaved because of this vital point in her case? Number 7, what is the quote other side of Elizabeth happily ever after story? And lastly, number 8, what does Elizabeth's story serve as a reminder of? So those are the 8 questions you're answering. You do not have to write the question. Is that right clear there? Just give me complete sentences and you're totally fine with that. And just put those answers in your notes. That makes sense, everybody?
Yes.
All right, give you a couple minutes to just make sure you get these questions. Take a screenshot, do whatever you're going to do. I do not remember if I made these questions in order of the video, but those are the 7 questions I have for you. What was your question? Yeah, I'm doing video recordings of all the lectures now, and yes, so I'm doing video recordings of all the lectures where you can hear the lecture, and then also all the near files are already in the CTLS right now, so they always be there for you to go back and look at. All right, so let's go ahead and now watch the film. I'm gonna play it one time. I may stop at certain points, but don't bait on it. All right. So we're gonna learn more about who again? Elizabeth Key. So listen up. You have the questions you got to answer. If you get them now, cool. But if you don't get them now, you can always go back and get it later, right? Just make sure you submit these notes by tomorrow.
Always using the law. I mean, it's understandable. First of all, the law can be hard to decipher. Second of all,
All right. I didn't mean to restart them. Okay. So you finished those notes. You answered those questions. You are now done with 2.8. Thanks. Any questions? Any questions? Okay.